Hello, everyone. Very warm welcome to She the People. And in our ongoing series, Investor, in partnership with BSC Investors Protection Fund, we talk about personal finance. We bring more clarity on important financial concepts, and we try to help women be independent decision makers when it comes to the matters of money. And as always, it is my pleasure to welcome Kiran Telang, a certified financial planner registered as an investment advisor with SEBI. And Kiran has been working with clients across India and overseas and helping them make smart investment decisions. And here also, she simplifies all the big financial terms and terminologies for us, helps us also see through our financial planning and gives us that direction in which we should be thinking. थैंक यू फॉर जॉइनिंग अस किरण। और आज का जो वेबिनार का सब्जेक्ट है वो है डेट म्यूचुअल फंड्स एंड क्या क्या तरीके के डेट म्यूचुअल फंड्स हो सकते हैं। तो चलिए मैं पहले आपको इनवाइट करती हूँ टू डू अ स्मॉल प्रेजेंटेशन एंड देन वी कैन जंप ऑन क्वेश्चंस एंड आल्सो टेक क्वेश्चंस फ्रॉम द ऑडियंस। किरण।
Yeah, thank you, Mugdha, and welcome everyone. Pleasure to be here as always. We have a very difficult topic today, debt mutual funds. It's way more complex than equity. So debt investing is way more complex than equity. As usual, I'll take you through a small presentation to get you through the basics, and then we can have a discussion. Right, so let's begin. So let's start with a basic concept of what actually is debt investment. See, debt investment जो होता है, आप एक principal amount invest कर रहे हैं, you give it to a bank or a financial institution, and that institution or bank promises to pay you a certain interest at predefined intervals. कि annual interest होगा, half yearly interest होगा, quarterly interest होगा, so you get that payment interim. And जो period होता है, जो tenure होता है investment का, उसको खत्म जब होता है, that time you get the principal back. So जैसे 5 साल की आपने कोई इन्वेस्टमेंट की है, हर एक साल आपको इंटरेस्ट मिल रहा है, 5th ईयर में यू गेट द इंटरेस्ट एंड द प्रिंसिपल बैक. सो दिस इज एसेंशियली व्हाट इज डेट इन्वेस्टिंग. आप किसी को पैसा दे रहे हैं एंड दे प्रॉमिस टू पे यू बैक at a certain defined rate of interest, a fixed rate of interest, right? So this is the basic concept. Debt investment ये चीज होती है. Now let us move a little ahead and understand what are the debt investments. So some of the common investments that we all know are bank fixed deposit, recurring deposits, postal deposits जो होते हैं, recurring deposit भी होते हैं, fixed deposit भी होते हैं, and your PPF. So what do you do in these investments, like a bank fixed deposit, for example? So you say, I'm keeping a fixed deposit for 3 years, and you choose either to take the interest every quarter or every year, or you take a cumulative fixed deposit. So आपको end में पूरा पैसा एक साथ मिल जाता है, and after 3 years you get your principal back. So that is how a bank fixed deposit works. Similarly, recurring deposit जो होता है, आप हर महीने कुछ amount invest करते हैं. So it's like small amounts getting accumulated over a period of time. So these are very simple instruments which we all understand कि उसमें एक rate पता है आपको पता है आपका पैसा कब वापस आना है. So this is a very simple investment in debt. Now what are the other instruments? जब हम debt investment की बात करते हैं तो ये तो बहुत ही सीधी सादी चीजें जो हमारे सामने हैं. If you look at the Indian debt market, so 3 segments हम इसमें clearly देख सकते हैं. First one is the government segment, second is the public sector units and the public sector banks, and third is the private sector which can have both banks as well as corporates. अब ये जो 3 groups हैं, these 3 groups offer you certain investments. For example, गवर्नमेंट जो रहती है उनके T-bills होते हैं, गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज होते हैं जिनको हम बॉन्ड्स के नाम से जानते हैं, एंड स्टेट डेवलपमेंट लोन्स होते हैं जो स्टेट गवर्नमेंट के बॉन्ड्स होते हैं. GSEC जो है दैट इज इशूड बाय द सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट, राइट. अब इसमें फर्क क्या है? T-bills जो होते हैं ये शॉर्ट टर्म के होते हैं, 91 डेज एंड 364 डेज. GSEC जो होते हैं जो 1 साल से ज्यादा टाइम के लिए इशू होते हैं बॉन्ड्स, उनको GSEC कहा जाता है. और स्टेट डेवलपमेंट लोन्स कैन अगेन बी ऑफ वेरिंग मेच्योरिटीज, मतलब अलग अलग टेन्योर के होते हैं. GSEC आर अवेलेबल एज लॉन्ग एज 40 इयर्स, मतलब आज आप इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं तो GSEC आप 40 साल का पेपर भी खरीद सकते हैं. So these are the things that are issued by the government. Now when you come to the public sector units and banks, हम लोग पब्लिक सेक्टर बॉन्ड्स तो जानते हैं, जैसे काफ़ी आप समझ लीजिए एनएचएआई या आरईसी वगैरह के बॉन्ड्स आपने सुने होंगे. सो दोज काइंड ऑफ बॉन्ड्स आर इश्यूड बाय द पब्लिक सेक्टर यूनिट्स. बैंक भी अपने बॉन्ड्स इश्यू करती हैं विच आर अगेन अवेलेबल टू द पब्लिक टू इन्वेस्ट इन. सीडीज शायद कम लोगों ने सुना होगा. CDs is basically corporate certificate of deposit. So ये banks issue कर सकते हैं. This is for a period of less than 1 year. So that is a short-term investment. And the third category, if we come to private sector, so CPs are certificates issued by private sector entities which are again short-term. So CDs और CPs जो होते हैं, these are below 1 year. Bonds जो होते हैं, those are above 1 year. So bonds can be issued by the government, by public sector units, by public sector banks, by private sector corporates and private sector banks, right? So bonds are across the board. And there are debentures which we have all heard about. तो ये main categories हैं. इनके अलावा काफ़ी सारे papers होते हैं, but I will not get into the complexity because फिर ये तो सारा दिन का session बन सकता है, इतनी variety है इसमें. Right now, let us come to how do you actually make money in debt. तो डेट में एक तो आप अगर बैंक एफडी का एग्जांपल ही ले लें तो यू गेट इंटरेस्ट, राइट? सो दैट इज द इंटरिम पे आउट दैट यू गेट, एंड यू गेट कैपिटल गेन्स बट नॉट ऑन बैंक फिक्स डिपॉजिट. क्योंकि बैंक फिक्स डिपॉजिट आपने अगर 1 लाख की फिक्स डिपॉजिट बनाई है तो आपको एंड पे 1 लाख ही मिलेगा, बिकॉज बैंक फिक्स डिपॉजिट्स आर नॉट ट्रेडेबल सिक्योरिटीज. जबकि हम बॉन्ड्स की बात करते हैं तो बॉन्ड्स आर ट्रेडेबल. तो आप बॉन्ड की मेच्योरिटी के पहले उसको मार्केट में सेल कर सकते हैं, जो सेकेंडरी मार्केट है उसमें. तो आपने समझिए 100 रुपए का बॉन्ड खरीदा है, हो सकता है वो आपको 110 में बिके. सो 10 रुपए का जो प्रॉफिट है, दैट 10 रुपीज इज योर कैपिटल गेन्स. सो दीज आर द टू वेज इन विच यू कैन मेक मनी. जैसे आपने बॉन्ड्स भी खरीदे हैं तो उसका जो इंटरेस्ट आता है उसका टेक्निकल नेम इज कूपन्स, राइट? सो एट एवरी से हाफ ईयर और एवरी ईयर वॉट एवर इज डिफाइंड इन दैट इंस्ट्रूमेंट, उसके हिसाब से आपको इंटरेस्ट आ जाता है. एंड वेन यू सेल दैट पेपर you get a capital gain or also possibly a capital loss. का 100 का पेपर है वो 95 रुपए में 95 में भी बिक सकता है. So you can get both ways, capital gains as well as capital loss. So this is how returns are generated in debt. Now these were the absolute basics of what the investment in debt means, right? अब रिस्क के बिना तो कोई इन्वेस्टमेंट होता नहीं है. But government securities are considered to be risk-free. T-bills जो होते हैं, those are considered to be risk-free because it is issued by the government. It is a very short tenure paper, so उसमें risk काफी zero risk माना जाता है उसको. In terms of credit risk, credit risk क्या चीज़ है? Credit risk is basically आप जब किसी को पैसा दे रहे हैं, will that entity return your money on time? Will that entity return the interest? Will it give you the interest as promised? अगर ये दो चीजें नहीं होती हैं, they fail to pay you your interest on time or they fail to return your money on time as promised, then they are defaulting. So basically इसको credit risk कहते हैं in technical terms. Now, as I said, government securities have zero credit risk because it is a government deal. But government securities also carry another kind of risk which is known as interest rate risk. अब ये थोड़ा सा इसको आप ध्यान से सुनिएगा. इंटरेस्ट रेट रिस्क का मूवमेंट जो होता है मार्केट में, अगर आपने 100 रुपए का आज एक इंस्ट्रूमेंट खरीदा है, एक पेपर है जो 100 रुपए का आपने खरीदा है एंड उसका रेट ऑफ रिटर्न 8% है. अब 1 साल बाद एक नया पेपर मार्केट में आता है, बिकॉज इंटरेस्ट रेट्स अब गिर चुके हैं तो द न्यू पेपर कम्स एट 7.5%. तो आपके पास जो है वो 100 रुपए का पेपर है 8% वाला, तो ऑब्वियसली आपके पास जो है वो ज़्यादा वैल्यूएबल है बिकॉज उस पर 8% इंटरेस्ट मिलता रहेगा टिल द मेच्योरिटी डेट. सो इन दैट वे आपने जो 100 रुपए में 8% वाला पेपर खरीदा है उसकी वैल्यू बढ़ गई. सो द प्राइस प्रॉबेबली इफ यू ट्राई टू सेल नाउ विल बी मोर देन 100 रुपीज बिकॉज इट विल पे यू मोर इंटरेस्ट ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम. लाइकवाइज इफ द इंटरेस्ट रेट इंक्रीजेज इन द मार्केट, अगर 8 के बदले नया पेपर 8.5 पे आता है तो आपका पेपर जो है उसकी वैल्यू कम हो जाती है बिकॉज यू आर गोइंग टू गेट ओनली 8% इंटरेस्ट. व्हाई वुड समबडी वांट टू बाय समथिंग व्हिच विल पे यू लेस इंटरेस्ट ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम? तो आपका वो 100 रुपए वाला जो पेपर है वो हो सकता है कम में बिके, मतलब हो सकता है नहीं, वो कम में ही बिकेगा, बट द रेट ऑब्वियसली विल नीड टू बी कैलकुलेटेड. सो दिस इज द इंटरेस्ट रेट रिस्क कि मार्केट में जिस तरह से इंटरेस्ट रेट चेंज होते हैं, गवर्नमेंट जब आरबीआई जब अनाउंस करती है उसके हिसाब से आपका मार्क टू मार्केट जो होता है वो रेट चेंज होता रहता है, तो आपके पेपर का प्राइस चेंज हो जाता है. सो दैट इज इंटरेस्ट रेट रिस्क. तो ये इंटरेस्ट रेट रिस्क जो है ये किसी भी तरह के पेपर में हो सकता है, और जितना लंबा ड्यूरेशन है, अगर आप 5 साल का पेपर ले रहे हैं एंड यू कंपेयर इट टू अ 1 ईयर पेपर, द इंटरेस्ट रेट रिस्क विल बी हायर इन द 5 ईयर पेपर एज कंपेयर टू द 1 ईयर पेपर। इसका रीजन ये है कि 5 साल में रेट चेंज कितनी बार होता है, आरबीआई कई बार रेट चेंज करेगा, तो हर एक बार आपका पेपर रिस्क में है। whereas if it is maturing within 1 year, आपके इवेंट्स जो है इंटरेस्ट रेट वाले वो कम हो जाते हैं। सो दैट इज वाई जो शॉर्ट टर्म वाले पेपर्स होते हैं उनमें इंटरेस्ट रेट रिस्क कम होता है, राइट। सो इफ यू अंडरस्टैंड दीज टू बेसिक कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ क्रेडिट रिस्क एंड इंटरेस्ट रेट रिस्क, दीज आर द प्राइमरी रिस्क इन डेट इन्वेस्टमेंट्स। इसके अलावा कई तरह के रिस्क होते हैं, बट आई विल टेक ओनली 2 मोर रिस्क हियर। एक तो होता है लिक्विडिटी रिस्क, कि आप पेपर सेल करना चाह रहे हैं मार्केट में बट कोई बायर नहीं है। So while the paper could be having a liquidity issue for a very short period of time, आपको जब पैसा चाहिए तब आपको नहीं मिल रहा है. So that is the liquidity risk which can occur in debt investments. Then there is reinvestment risk. So reinvestment risk is basically when you earn the interest, जैसे कूपन हमने कहा या इंटरेस्ट कहा, तो अगर आप उस पैसे को री इन्वेस्ट करना चाहें तो उस टाइम जो मार्केट में रेट चल रहा है उसी पे आप इन्वेस्ट कर पाएंगे. So there is always a possibility that the market rate at that time could be lower. So that is the reinvestment risk. So it can occur for in reinvestment of your interest that you earn. It could also occur for the reinvestment of the principal that you get back at maturity. So ये risk हर समय मौजूद होता है. So what does debt mutual fund do? तो आप ये सारी चीज़ों जो हमने अभी बात की, सब तरह के जो पेपर्स हैं आप इंडिविजुअली भी खरीद सकते हैं एज एन इंडिविजुअल इन्वेस्टर, बट अ डेट म्यूचुअल फंड एक्चुअली बाइज डिफरेंट काइंड्स ऑफ दीज इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स एंड पैकेजेस इट इनटू अ पोर्टफोलियो टू ऑफर टू यू, राइट. तो आप इंडिविजुअली एक एक चीज़, आप गवर्नमेंट बॉन्ड खरीदें या आप टी बिल्स खरीदें या आप कंपनी एफडीज खरीदें, इनके बदले डेट म्यूचुअल फंड जो है आपको ये सारी चीज़ें एक पैकेज में बना के देता है. सो दैट इज एसेंशियली व्हाट अ डेट म्यूचुअल फंड इज. अब डेट म्यूचुअल फंड के कई तरह के होते हैं. ये जो लिस्ट मैंने आपको दिखाई है, दीज आर द कैटेगरीज ऑफ डेट म्यूचुअल फंड्स एज डिफाइंड बाय सेबी. सो दिस कैन रेंज फ्रॉम लिक्विड म्यूचुअल फंड, जो कि बहुत ही शॉर्ट ड्यूरेशन के लिए होता है, जिसमें सारे होल्डिंग्स होते हैं वो 91 डेज में मैच्योर हो जाते हैं. तो जैसे हमने कहा, देखा था अभी कि शॉर्ट टर्म का अगर कोई पेपर है तो उसमें इंटरेस्ट रेट रिस्क बहुत ही कम रहता है. सो 91 डेज में इंटरेस्ट रेट रिस्क बहुत कम रहता है. सो दिस इज अ लिक्विड फंड. Then you have increasing periods, ultra short duration fund होता है, low duration fund है, money market fund है. यहाँ तक जो है इनमें 1 year maturity के पेपर्स होते हैं. अब आप नेक्स्ट मेजर सेगमेंट अगर चले जाएं तो 1 to 3 year वाला जो पेपर होता है वो शॉर्ट ड्यूरेशन में होता है. आप आगे जैसे बढ़ते जाते हैं इनका ड्यूरेशन बढ़ता है, मीडियम टर्म होता है, मीडियम टू लॉन्ग ड्यूरेशन होता है और लॉन्ग ड्यूरेशन होता है. अब एक कैटेगरी है जो मार्केट मूवमेंट के हिसाब से म्यूचुअल फंड के अंदर ही पेपर सेल बाय करती रहती है, विच इज नोन एज अ डायनामिक बॉन्ड फंड. तो जैसे इक्विटी में भी हम डायनामिक इक्विटी या डायनामिक एसेट एलोकेशन फंड्स देखते हैं, सिमिलर वे डायनामिक बॉन्ड फंड्स होते हैं जिनमें फंड मैनेजर कॉल लेता है कि व्हाट इज द बेटर पेपर टू होल्ड नाउ. दे कैन आइदर होल्ड एट अ वेरी शॉर्ट एंड अल्ट्रा शॉर्ट ड्यूरेशन पेपर भी रख सकते हैं. दे कैन ऑल्सो होल्ड लॉन्ग ड्यूरेशन पेपर डिपेंडिंग ऑन देयर आउटलुक ऑफ द इंटरेस्ट रेट, बिकॉज इंटरेस्ट रेट चेंज का इम्पैक्ट होता है आपकी रिटर्न्स पर, राइट. इसके अलावा आप अगर देखें तो ये कॉर्पोरेट बॉन्ड फंड है. देन देयर इज क्रेडिट रिस्क फंड, जैसे हमने रिस्क की बात की थी, तो इस क्रेडिट रिस्क फंड में उस तरह के पेपर्स होते हैं जिनके रिटर्न्स बहुत हाई रहते हैं, लेकिन उसमें probability of loss is also very high because they are buying papers of companies which might default, which have a higher risk of default. So this is suitable only to those people who can afford to take that risk and who can afford to bear that loss if it happens, right? So this is one. Then you have separate categories like banking and PSU gilt fund, जिनमें इन्हीं कैटेगरी के पेपर्स बाय किए जाएंगे. गिल्ट फंड जो है उसमें सिर्फ गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज बाय की जाएंगी. एंड देन अगेन विद इन गिल्ट फंड देयर आर डिफरेंट कैटेगरीज, राइट. सो ये एसेंशियली एक लिस्ट हो गई जो सेबी ने डिफाइन की है, एंड सारे म्यूचुअल फंड्स इनमें से किसी एक कैटेगरी में फिट होते हैं. अब ये तो सारा ज्ञान हो गया. अब फायदे क्या होते हैं, आप क्यों डेट म्यूचुअल फंड में इन्वेस्ट करें. सो एज ऑलवेज म्यूचुअल फंड के जो बेनिफिट्स हैं वो डेट म्यूचुअल फंड को भी मिलते हैं. देयर इज अ प्रोफेशनल फंड मैनेजर who is going to pick up the papers which are used to create the mutual fund scheme. As an individual, you might not have the understanding of so many different type of things being offered under debt. So बहुत complicated हो जाती हैं चीज़ें. So it is better if a professional fund manager chooses that. Second is diversification. So as an individual, you have a limited amount of money to invest. Now you cannot use that limited amount of money to invest in a wide variety of instruments. So when you buy a debt mutual fund scheme, you get the entire variety within one scheme. So you can have that with a limited amount of money. एंड देर इज लिक्विडिटी, कि इसमें मोस्टली जब मतलब आपको जब पैसे की जरूरत होती है, यू कैन जस्ट गिव अ रिडेम्पशन एंड द मनी विल कम टू योर अकाउंट. It is again like all mutual funds, very convenient. You can use a check to make an investment. You can make digital investments. You can do SIPs. You can do systematic withdrawal plans. You can redeem at any point in time. So all these benefits are available. It's very convenient to invest through debt mutual funds. नाउ हाउ डू यू एक्चुअली यूज दिस, ये आपको कॉन्सेप्ट अगर समझ में आ गया है तो मेजर जो 4 यूज हैं इसके. एक तो आप फंड्स पार्क कर सकते हैं, जैसे यू हैव सम मनी विच हैज कम नाउ फ्रॉम मेच्योरिटी ऑफ सर्टन प्रोडक्ट्स, या आपने कोई प्रॉपर्टी सेल की है, देयर आर वेरियस रीजंस वेयर यू हैव गॉट अ लम सम ऑफ मनी एंड द इवेंचुअल यूज ऑफ दैट मनी सम टाइम अवे, कि 3-6 महीने में आपको जरूरत पड़ने वाली है. सो यू कैन पार्क योर फंड्स इन दीज डेट म्यूचुअल फंड्स. Now, why you should use this above a bank fixed deposit is because for most short term category of funds, जैसे liquid fund हुआ या overnight fund हुआ, या आपके short term ultra short term है, इनमें पैसा जो है within 24 hours withdraw कर सकते हैं आप. So there is a freedom to withdraw at a very short notice and there is no premature withdrawal penalty, unlike a bank fixed deposit where अगर आपने 6 महीने की FD की है और आप 3 महीने में आपको पैसे की जरूरत है, so you might have to pay certain amount of penalty while withdrawing the money. So इस दौरान मतलब आपको म्यूचुअल फंड में अगर आपने इन्वेस्ट किया हुआ तो you won't need to pay that penalty. Second use can be parking of your emergency funds. जैसे हम हमेशा बात करते हैं financial planning की, you should always have an emergency fund for use in difficult times. So your emergency fund can be invested in this category of funds, जैसे अल्ट्रा शॉर्ट फंड हुए या लो ड्यूरेशन फंड हुए या मनी मैनेजर फंड हुए, इनमें आप पार्क कर सकते हैं एंड दिस कैन बी लेफ्ट देयर एंड इट इज विड्रॉएबल वेरी इजीली, इट इज वेरी लिक्विड. द नेक्स्ट यूटिलाइजेशन इज फॉर क्रिएटिंग अ बैलेंस इन योर एसेट एलोकेशन. एसेट एलोकेशन की जब हम बात करते हैं, सो देयर इज ऑलवेज डेट एंड इक्विटी एंड देयर इज अ रीबैलेंसिंग विच हैपेंस एट अ सर्टन ड्यूरेशन, से 1 साल में एक बार या 3 साल में एक बार, जिस तरह से आप अपना मैनेज कर रहे हैं. So how do you rebalance? You need to have something from where you can easily withdraw and you need to have some place where you can easily invest without much restrictions. So a debt mutual fund product will be a perfect fit to manage your asset allocation. The most important thing which we use it for is for income generation. Especially for people who are retired. आप retirement की scenario में अब जब बात करते हैं तो आपको एक monthly income की जरूरत होती है. So you can park your lump sum in debt funds and you can draw on a monthly or a quarterly basis as you need. You can set up a like जैसे SIP होता है, जो हमने SWP पे भी एक सेशन किया था, तो systematic withdrawal उसी तरह से होता है, but instead of you putting in money every month, you can withdraw money every month. So you can use debt category of mutual funds for income generation because इसमें volatility नहीं होती equity की तरह, कि आपका fund जो है बहुत धीरे धीरे grow करेगा, लेकिन उसमें loss होने के chances कम है. And you will be easily able to predict that this is the time frame in which my money will get over. आपने अगर 10 लाख डाले हैं तो कितने टाइम तक ये पैसा चलेगा, उसका अंदाजा लगाना काफी आसान है. So that is why you need to use this for income generation. So these are the 4 major uses of debt mutual funds. So that was it from my side, and I think there'll be more questions, more discussion happening with Mugdha, and we can take up the other matters there.
Absolutely. But that was a very comprehensive presentation, Kiran, and a lot of things that even I didn't have an idea about got cleared there. And the ones that are in the ambiguity section, वो मैं आपको अभी सवाल पूछती हूँ. I definitely want to speak about taxation, लेकिन उस पर मैं जाऊँ उससे पहले मैं ये जानना चाहती हूँ कि whenever we talk about the various types of mutual funds, and within that portfolio of yours, there should be diversification, is what everyone advises, right? So I wanted to talk about, what is there a ratio in which someone's portfolio should have all three, or is it upon them to pick up and basis their risk appetite and financial goals? Or as a financial advisor, what is the recommendation of the division of these funds? And are these funds very somewhat age centric? Do you also see an X category of people investing in them versus a Y category?
Brilliant question, Mugdha. So, let me try and put it in this manner. Firstly, let me take out the age factor from this. So, it is not
Uh-huh.
age dependent at all. So, I could have a 25-year-old who has debt funds, I have a 80-year-old who has debt funds, and everybody in between. So, as I said, the
Okay.
utilization of the debt funds is for various causes. So, somebody who's retired, or somebody, say, who's at 45 taken a sabbatical, both of them could use debt funds as a place to park their funds for systematic withdrawal to generate income.
Got
A
it. Hmm.
25-year-old can use it for parking emergency fund, right? So you have different utilization at different stages depending on what your requirement is. So debt mutual fund can be fit in everywhere. Now,
Right.
what category? I mean, how should you split it between categories? So, it is not necessary that you have too many debt funds. Now, it will entirely depend on what you are using it for. So, like I said, if you're using it for emergency funds, you will stick to the liquid fund, to the money market category, जो एकदम short duration below 1 year वाले में आप उसमें stick करेंगे. A similar case for systematic withdrawals where you need income generation, right? But somebody who's trying to maybe get that extra bit beyond bank fixed deposits and who can afford to take the risk will go into, say, a credit risk category कि उनकी मतलब capacity है risk लेने की, so they will go into that category. There could be, for that little bit extra, you could look at categories like banking and PSU वाले जो हैं या short term या medium term है. So these will be longer duration funds, but the risk also increases. So people need to understand that to get that 1% extra, also you are increasing your risk to a certain extent. So till it is always a balance between how much risk you're willing to take and how much return are you expecting for that thing. So if you want to take a much higher risk, you might want to select an equity fund instead of a debt fund, right? So again, that there is a balance
Hmm.
between the categories also. So it entirely depends on what you are wanting to do with that money that you're looking to invest in debt fund. So normally, I would say that sticking to the shorter duration funds for most purposes is fine. I mean, don't expect much return from it, but it will also not deplete, and you will have more
Hmm.
visibility on the kind of returns that you're going to generate out of that.
Got it. Got it. While we did a very extensive slide on what are the risks associated with debt mutual funds, but can we say that in comparison to others, it is still a safe option?
See, actually, safe in what sense? As I said, the risks are of different
Hmm.
kinds. So, are you
Right.
okay with taking a credit risk? You are
Hmm.
okay to put that money where you think that it might default, but if it doesn't default, you might get that very high return in that
Right.
category, right? Second thing
Hmm.
is we also need to look at the other factors which I did not mention. One of them is inflation, right? So debt mutual funds,
Got it.
if you stick to the category which are safer, will not offer you inflation beating returns. So on a long period of time, that is not something that you're looking for wealth creation. You're looking at it only
Got
from an
it.
asset allocation perspective to keep that money separately. So in fact, if the equity market crashes tomorrow, there is something which is balancing the portfolio and will not fall. So overall basis आपका उस तरह से manage हो जाता है. So it depends on what risk are you looking to manage.
Got it. Coming to taxation, what is the tax treatment of debt mutual funds?
So now the tax treatment is very, very simple. Everything
Hmm.
that you earn from debt funds gets added to your income, and it is the tax is payable at your personal tax slab. तो इससे पहले मतलब कुछ टाइम पहले तक आई थिंक आई डोंट रिमेम्बर द डेट बट आई थिंक टिल लास्ट ईयर इट वाज you could get some benefit in taxation from debt mutual fund, but let's not complicate things right
Right.
now. It is similar to what you would do in a bank fixed deposit. So bank fixed deposit का जैसे interest आता है, that gets added to your income and you pay tax at whatever tax slab you are in. So it is exactly the same treatment.
Great. So now we'll start taking a few questions. We will flash them on our screen, and the ones who want to ask questions can also utilize this time to send us their queries. All right. What are corporate bonds? Aishwarya is asking.
Okay, Aishwarya, corporate bonds are basically debt instruments which are more than 1 year of maturity. I mean, it could be beyond 1 year, which are issued by several companies. So they take the money from investors and they utilize it for their company's growth or whatever they need it for, and you get like a bank fixed deposit. You are promised a rate of interest on that. So corporate bond paying say 8% rate of return will pay you 8% every year till the time of maturity.
Vishali Garg is asking, are debt mutual funds a good option for saving for my short-term goals?
Absolutely, Vaishali. So, when we look at the overall financial planning perspective, anything that is short term in nature, any requirement of funds that will be, below 3 years or even below 5 years for that matter, you should not look at equity. So, debt is a good way to, invest for these short term goals. So, you could choose based on, what is your duration. So, you could choose anything right from liquid fund to a short term category depending on how long your duration of the goal is. So एक चीज मैंने जो presentation में नहीं बताई, let me just put it across here. So whenever you are selecting any scheme, जैसे आप वैशाली saying short term goals, so you should always try to match your goal duration to the duration of the fund. तो आप short term अगर देख रहे हैं तो you should always look at what the short term fund is offering, what suitability it is showing in the investment period. So match it with that. You're less likely to go wrong.
Great. Let's take the next question. She Saxena is asking, is SIP beginner friendly?
Absolutely, Oshi. SIPs are a way to manage your cash flow. It's a cash flow solution basically. If you're somebody who earns an income on a monthly basis, आप अगर salaried है, this could be ideal. Maybe people who are self-employed or who have intermittent income, who are consultants, they might not have an income coming monthly, so probably it might be a little difficult for them to do an SIP because their monies come at different periods. But otherwise, for most people who are salaried, an SIP could be a very good option to start investing.
It induces discipline more than anything else. And financial planning, again, is so much about how, in a disciplined way, you can plan your future. So,
Absolutely. I think we did a
absolutely.
full episode on SIPs. Oshi, you should go and
Absolutely.
see that.
So, in fact, you can go back to that episode and that will give you a lot of insight into the nitty gritties and how you can start your journey, etc. So that will be helpful. But in that case, if one has to start their journey, even with debt mutual funds, what is the way that they should go, Kiran, before we take the next question?
Yeah, so Mugdha, I would say, see, every individual, every family needs to maintain an emergency fund. So I think an SIP into a debt fund would be a great way to create an emergency fund. So I think that could be the beginning of most people. So for most youngsters, who tend to ignore this bit of it, who might need to create an emergency fund, I think you can begin with that. And once you accumulate those funds, then you can probably move to other categories. You can move to equity for your longer term goals. For youngsters, it could also be, you are probably going to go for further education, which you would want to support yourself partially at least, or you could be saving for your wedding or even for a travel goal. These are goals which could be in the next 2 to 5 year time frame. So
Short
I think debt
term.
mutual funds could be a really good way to start your investments.
Great. All right, let's look at the next question. What is the major benefit of debt mutual funds than a regular MF?
Okay, Srilekha, I think I'll have to go back to the basics. So mutual fund is a entire universe which has different categories within it. So within mutual fund, you have debt, you have equity. These are the two major categories. Within debt, as we explained today, there are several other categories. A regular mutual fund, a debt mutual fund is also a regular mutual fund. equity mutual fund is also a regular mutual fund. So आप regular और debt fund को अलग तरीके से मत देखिए. So probably what you mean to say, what I understand from your question is SIP in a debt mutual fund against a SIP in an equity mutual fund. So that is what I feel you might be meaning. So
Also,
major
I'm
benefit.
guessing duration wise.
नहीं, so not duration wise, I think generally लोग MF को equity से ही equate करते हैं. Very few people
Equate करते हैं.
understand that there are
That's
debt
true.
mutual funds, so that is what I think
Yeah.
she means here. So as I said, try and figure out what you're saving for. Like we said, short-term goals can be met through investment in debt mutual funds, and otherwise, all long-term goals you should look at equity or hybrid or those category of funds. So it can be a mixture. तो एक ही चीज नहीं होती है. It's like having a थाली, तो थाली में आप सारी चीजें थोड़ी थोड़ी हैं आपकी, एंड इट शुड बी अ बैलेंस. यू कांट हैव अचार लाइक a sabzi, or you can't have sabzi like an achar, so you should have that clear cut balance on everything that is there in your portfolio.
All right. Suraj has a question. He's saying, how much do debt mutual funds charge in fees and expenses? Is this better than index funds?
Okay, Suraj, there is a large variation in the debt mutual funds and fees and expenses depending on what category. So the liquid funds will be much cheaper, credit risk funds will be much higher. So you can actually look at the fact sheets that these fund houses publish, and you can check what are the expenses. Now, when you talk about index funds, I assume that you're meaning index funds in equity. So these are two different asset classes. You cannot really compare, So a credit risk or debt fund could be very, very different than an index fund in equity. So these are two very different categories. You really cannot compare. Now, there are also index funds within debt. So those will definitely be cheaper as compared to other debt funds which are there, active debt funds, which take calls on which paper to pick rather than following a particular index. So within debt funds, yes, index funds are likely to be cheaper.
Having spoken about this, I always wonder, Kiran, because there is so much transaction happening in a short-term horizon, obviously you need a fund manager who knows what is happening. What is the right way of going about it, and why is a fund manager very important in this scenario?
See, fund manager is a professional who is investing. So obviously, he or she understands better. And as I said, debt is much more complicated than equity investing. So there are
Correct.
too many parameters, and the impacts are much larger in debt investment. So what I understand is you are asking how to select a debt fund manager,
Oh,
right?
no, also on the importance of basically having a professional doing this for you versus one saying that, okay, I'm going to do this myself,
Right.
or, from that point
Okay.
of view.
So see, when we spoke in the presentation, I mean, there are only two basic things we spoke about. One is interest rate movement, right? So for an individual to understand where the interest rate is going is very difficult. Whereas somebody who's very professional in this area would be understanding the interest rate movements much better. Though obviously nobody can predict, but they will at least understand what is happening, and accordingly the placements of the investments can be done. Secondly, again, the credit risk part, which we spoke about. So, what is the risk in actually buying a paper of a particular entity? So, government bonds, obviously, it is credit risk free, but within corporates, if you're buying certain things, what should you look at? A professional will be much better placed to make that selection than an individual. Also, as an individual, like we said, that there is only so much money that you're going to invest. So how are you going to select so many categories and ensure that you're diversified enough? So when you give it to a professional, when you select a scheme, say for example, if you select a liquid fund and you maybe select a gilt fund, you could have two different tenures. Liquid fund is very short duration, and gilt fund are longer papers. So you're creating a mixture. So maybe you can create that by yourself, but then again, picking up things in the active side will be a little difficult for individuals to manage. So a mutual fund through a professional fund manager makes much more sense.
Great. I think we have one more question coming up. Let's take that before we wrap up. Priya Singh is asking, what are the key advantages of investing in debt mutual funds? Oh, well,
Okay,
that's
back to the
the
presentation.
yes,
Okay. Yeah, we discussed that, but let me just reiterate that.
yeah.
So, Priya, like I just answered Mugdha in the earlier question, debt is much more complicated. It's much more difficult for an individual to, figure out beyond bank FDs and all what you need to buy. So, unless you're buying like, PSU bonds or you're buying government securities, which you know are relatively risk free in terms of the entity not paying your money back कि आपका पैसा ले लिया और वापस नहीं कर रहे हैं वो सिनेरियो गवर्नमेंट सिक्योरिटीज में या पब्लिक सेक्टर यूनिट्स में आने के चांसेस बहुत कम है बट इफ यू गो टू कॉर्पोरेट सेक्टर प्राइवेट सेक्टर there is a chance that your money might not come back. So, are you having enough knowledge, or are you having enough data, or do you have enough research to, ensure that you're picking up the correct paper to invest in? तो ये चीज़ें जो हैं डेट म्यूचुअल फंड में बिकॉज देर इज अ प्रोफेशनल फंड मैनेजमेंट टीम देर इज अ प्रोफेशनल फंड मैनेजर they look into various aspects, and because SEBI has very strict rules about what kind of papers can be invested in, there are categories, there is risk profiling done for the papers that are being picked up. So इतनी सारी चीज़ें देखने के बाद एक म्यूचुअल फंड स्कीम में पैसा इन्वेस्ट होता है मतलब जो आपका पैसा लग रहा है वो लोग जाके उसको कंपनीज में इन्वेस्ट करते हैं सो इट बिकम्स ईजियर फॉर यू कि आपका 1 लाख है आपको इतनी सारी रिसर्च करने की जरूरत नहीं है यू जस्ट सिलेक्ट द स्कीम बेस्ड ऑन योर रिक्वायरमेंट्स एंड आप उसमें पैसा लगा दीजिए एंड बाकी ये फंड मैनेजमेंट टीम देख लेंगी सो दिस इज द मेन बेनिफिट दूसरी चीज़ ये है कि इट इज़ वेरी वेरी कन्वीनियंट कि आपको जैसे आप बाकी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट करते हैं आप SIP के थ्रू कर लीजिए आपके पास लमसम है आप लमसम कर लीजिए you can do it digitally you can give a check you can directly go to the fund house office and do it इतने सारे तरीके हैं जिनसे आप इन्वेस्ट कर सकते हैं there are several platforms which offer you this so there are n number of routes through which you can invest your money also because it is through a fund house you can withdraw it very easily तो आपको कहीं और जाने की जरूरत नहीं है मतलब आप ऑनलाइन उसको रिडीम कर सकते हैं और मोस्ट ऑफ द शॉर्ट कैटेगरी फंड्स यू गेट द मनी इन 24 आवर्स आपने आज ट्रांजैक्शन डाला है नेक्स्ट वर्किंग डे मॉर्निंग द मनी इज इन योर अकाउंट सो इट इज़ वेरी वेरी कन्वीनियंट इट इज़ वेरी लिक्विड बहुत आसानी से आपका पैसा मैनेज हो जाता है सो इट्स अ वेरी गुड ऑप्शन टू हैव
Also, Priya, if you have any more questions, you can just refer to the presentation after we finish. We will be uploading this live chat as well, so you can catch it there. And I hope all your questions are answered there. But thank you so much, Kiran, as always, for simplifying this for us. We have spoken on a wide spectrum of investment tools, and especially the equity market this time. And you have taken all the questions so generously. Thank you for your time and all the insights.
Absolute pleasure, Mugdha. Thank you so much.
So, everybody, start your journey, get in touch with an investment advisor. We try to make these financial terms simplified for you. We try to simplify them. But when you are taking decisions, please do consult an investment advisor and happy investing. So, thank you for joining us.